Hello everyone, this is part 2 of What If Naruto Got Lost in Time, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Naruto stretched his hands over his head, looking like he was about to finally lumber out of bed. This was the 5th attempt this morning, before, after a moment of deliberation, he flopped back onto bed. This was the first time he'd been able to sleep in for a couple months, and he was going to relish it, and prolong it for as long as he could. His head had been pounding since the middle of the night, and he was hoping that maybe he could sleep it off. His entire body ached, and he felt as if he'd been on death's door for the majority of the week, though in actuality, he'd spent the most of it sleeping. Eventually though, the sun managed to oust him completely, as not even his shut blinds could fully keep it out. Running a hand through his unruly mussed hair, he rummaged through his closet with bleary, sleep eyes, scouring its depth for something that wasn't colorful. Which was a feat in itself. He pried out an old, wrinkly dark shirt to wear over his mesh quarter sleeve, pulling on shinobi cargo pants, and was about to reach for his high-tie 8, when he realized he'd put them all on inside out. After redoing his attire, he mused whether perhaps he should tell Jiraiya that today might not be such a great idea. Maybe he should tell Jiraiya he wasn't ready. Nah. Naruto could handle anything that came his way, whether 13 years in the past or not. Naruto, are you in there? Sakura-chan's voice was coming from the other side of his apartment door. Pulling pants on and stumbling into his hallway, he unlocked it. She stepped in with a bit of a frosty air to her demeanor, and Naruto immediately cringed. He did something, didn't he? One look in her eyes told him that yes, he did something very, very stupid. There was silence. I heard. Heard what? Naruto fidgeted. He hated silence. It brought back bad memories. Jiraiya told me. Her eyes were throwing kunai at him. He blinked, G-sping his hallway table. He did. Yeah. She nodded, crossing arms over her chest. He was very vague, but he said something about you and. Sakura was searching his eyes for something. He made sure to blink slowly. Some sort of ceiling. Ah. He scratched the back of his head. Did he really? Yeah. I'm starting one of the way cooler chapters now. Not just turning leaves into grass and that stuff. Actually, you know, I was supposed to meet him today. I understand, Naruto. Sakura said softly. That you might not come back. And he was, huh? The blonde sputtered. Jiraiya-sama had said something about how dangerous it was, and you might not make it back. Naruto looked at her fondly, an odd mixture of a smile on his face. I'll be back, Sakura-chan. She nodded, a hopeful smile on her face. Ramen. Naruto wiggled his eyebrows. Date. Dumbass. They walked out together, with a friendship that would hopefully transcend the time that Naruto was about to leap into. But Sakura sounded a bit too sad for just needless worry. She didn't actually think he'd just ditch her purposefully, did she? He wouldn't pull a Sasuke on her, even if her punches scared the living S out of him. Dot. The hill was already prepared when Naruto trekked his way up there. Konoha was in the distance, its towers standing proud and tall even when circled with ominous forests. This was by far the tallest hill until the Iwa mountain range, a long distance away in the horizon. What a nice day, the blonde thought, and he hoped that whatever time he landed in would be experiencing the good fortune of a warm front. Jiraiya was already waiting, cross-legged and stone-faced. His eyes were closed in what could be seen as deep meditation. Sadly, Jiraiya wasn't nice enough to do the seals for him. He decided that he wouldn't disturb the man, and began the first structure. It wasn't until he was fully done with the center graph did Jiraiya stir. Out of the other 4 that overlapped at its edges, forming a bit of a box, this was by far the hardest. Maybe it was the knowledge that this was the part that would let him travel amongst time or get him lost in a slipstream that scared him. His ink brush was nothing more than inches from the rice paper when Jiraiya's eyes snapped open. Watch where you put that thing. Holy F. You're too close to the second translation to be starting the second graph there. Naruto grinned sheepishly, looking up from his artwork. Right. The older man huffed, hands in the soft grass. Really, brat, how would you live without me? You'd be stuck in a slipstream if I hadn't opened my eyes. I'd check it over. Naruto rolled his eyes. Somehow I don't believe that. The Sannin replied. There was a silence webbed with anger and frustration from Naruto, and a calmer contemplative side from Jiraiya. The blonde worked in silence, goading the Sannin just to point out another mistake so he could yell back. But the Sannin was quiet all through his third graph. And even quiet through 3 translations through his fourth, until he opened his mouth. Naruto was ready to whirl on him. Good job. You. Wah. Naruto sputtered, noticing that even though he praised, Jiraiya wasn't happy in the slightest. It's a good job. The third graph. Naruto looked up from his work and eyed the man sitting a few feet away from him. But you don't look too happy about that. The man sighed, and Naruto was struck by how tired the man looked. Tired, and worn out. I'm not any younger, Naruto. I know. The blonde snorted. There's a reason the ladies avoid you. You're ruining the moment, brat. Sorry. He didn't sound it. As I was saying, Jiraiya coughed, and Naruto realized this was a long speech, so he began his work again. There's got to be someone experienced enough to lead the next generation in sealing. Not saying that you're not talented, Naruto, but you don't take enough precautions when you seal. I've never made a really horrible mistake. Naruto pointed out, even though he knew, seriously, that he was only prolonging the inevitable. Yet, and never will. He said, anyway, it's good you're optimistic. Jiraiya scoffed. But that's just wishful thinking. Looking up 17 translations into the fourth seal, Naruto was about to retort. He saw the look on Jiraiya's face and decided against it. Naruto knew that he was prying him open with just a look, cleaving through his thoughts by the mere movement of his eyes. Times like these Naruto cursed he didn't wear a mask like Kakashi. Jiraiya finally spoke. You're more of the person who's going to learn from their mistakes. Exactly. But you're not going to learn if you're S. I'm not. Think of the odds, Naruto. Impossible is a word that will never belong in your vocabulary, but perhaps it's about time you put it there. I'll be fine. Naruto growled out. Sometimes, the lengths people went to when they were worried were so outrageous. Here, check. The Sannin stood then, and Naruto took it as a wordless cue for the sage to do his own once-over, and backed away slowly. To some degree, no matter how small or how little Naruto paid attention to it, he was aware of the dangers that began with just thinking about time travel, let alone doing it. Perhaps though, he just didn't want to admit it to himself. It wasn't like he was not cautious. Quite the opposite. The main seal, glowing azure in the center of his graph, was surprisingly perfect. The second, to the upper right, only needed one fixing. The third, which was the lower left, was also perfect. And the fourth, rearing the seal in the lower right-hand corner, only had one mistranslation. The seal faced counterclockwise. Clockwise, and he'd go into the future. It's good, Jiraiya said in his approval, after steadily looking it over for the past few minutes. He rummaged through his pockets, and Naruto watched him draw out a scroll sealed with wax with widened eyes. This is an anchor seal. Jiraiya began with seriousness, even though Naruto was well aware of what it was. Plant this in any certain point in time, and you'll be able to visit again if you add the translations into your main seal. Naruto was near jumping in anticipation. I'm warning you though, Naruto. This is a very important decision, and I'm only giving you one, so choose wisely. Of course. Naruto answered quickly, taking it with shaking hands. There was a heavy pause, as Naruto waited with bated breath for the words he'd been hearing in his head all morning. Free to go. Jiraiya saluted, a wry smile on his face. Naruto saluted back, eagerly stepping into the middle of the seal. It burned ferociously at his feet. The light rose around him, seeming to collect in a cloud of blue, before it shot into the sky. All that was left was a solemn-faced old man, and a burning, crumbling paper. X. Naruto's head hurt like a mother bear. He was apparently in some underbrush, from the stick that was nicely wedged into his side and the leaves that tickled his nose. Popping his head out of the shrubbery, he took a look around. Konoha, definitely. The seal wasn't supposed to transport him too far away from its original place. He tried to look at the Hokage mountain, an easy way to tell what date it was, but it was blocked by a tree uprooted in front of him. Sometimes he wondered if he was going to get stuck. Despite blatantly slipping off most of Jiraiya's ominous warnings, he did feel like he got a bite from them. With all the what-ifs that packaged themselves so nicely with the whole time-traveling debate, he usually didn't care much for them. There were always what-ifs, right? So what was the point in always dwelling on them? And then of course, there was the fact that most of those were going to come true one way or another. He's late. Again. Naruto paused in his loud rustling, craning his ears to hear the faint voices he could make out. Yeah, I know. Hey, if he never shows, wanna go get ramen with me? Never. Another scream. Actually, Sasuke-kun, would you like to? No. A beat hadn't even passed. HN. Naruto blinked. Oh god. He knew exactly where he was. Exactly what time period he was in, and exactly what was going to happen. Immediately, he put a genjutsu on his appearance. A good one, because he didn't want Kakashi mysteriously popping in and whipping the Sharingan on him. The whiskers were gone, his hair was brown. That should be good enough. He stepped out of the shrubbery, dancing across the bramble as he tried to get a vine off his foot. SF. He struggled in a 1 versus 1 with the vine winning for most of it, until he just whipped out a kunai and lopped the whole thing off. By this point, he danced out into the center of a disturbingly familiar bridge, with 3 disturbingly familiar faces peering at him with expressions of disbelief and surprise. Hey, Sakura pointed wildly at him, looking just as surprised as she was worried. Who are you? He's a villain. His younger self shouted, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Let's fight him and save Konoha. You idiot, Sasuke muttered with emphasis, nudging to Naruto's forehead. He's got a high-tie 8. The young blonde squinted at it, before rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Oh yeah, whoops. Yeah, you idiot, Sakura parroted, sticking her tongue out. His younger self returned it. Oh god, this was making out to be just awful. Soon the blonde turned back to him. But who are you, anyway? The blonde genin asked shrewdly. Me. Naruto pointed to himself, as if there could possibly be anyone else. Well, you see, it's a bit of a long story. You sound like our sensei. Sakura sniffed, making up stupid excuses. Do they usually end with your sensei getting a lot of women and saving the world before getting dumped in a bush behind a bridge full of dumb kids? EWW. Sakura shrieked, and then, hey, wait, what? Did you really get a lot of women? His younger self perked up, all loud and in his face. He almost flinched back, but held still. Of course. That's just a part of the game. Lots of women, and super cool missions. So you're a Junin, then? Naruto couldn't even get himself to look at the kid's fac. I've never seen you around before. He managed it somehow, though, looking straight into the obsidian eyes, their history playing through them like crackling, soundless film. Sasuke's face, are you scared, chicken? The blood down his en and the needles in his spine as he insisted his body just moved on his own, the Sharingan in his eyes as he looked up into the blonde's red ones, boss still connected from the hole in Naruto's lung. It wasn't this bad seeing the Uchiha in his time, with his utterly impassive visage, the cool dark of his eyes unfamiliar and alien on the pale face of someone he used to know. But here, where there was still a brief spark of life in the depths, where he still resembled the boy Naruto used to know, used to believe was his best friend, it hurt just that much more. He gulped though, attempting to shake the feeling away. Naruto tapped his forehead protector. You said it yourself. You could have just cared a Konoha nin and taken it for yourself. Sasuke pointed out. You guys really believe I'm some sort of spy? Naruto grumbled. Wouldn't I be, you know, trying to shank the Hokage? And not sitting around talking to a bunch of genin. We're not a bunch of genin. His younger, more annoying self piped up angrily. I'm gonna be the best ninja in the whole world. He's got a point though, Sakura admitted quietly. And anyway, I've got a mission report to turn in. He lied easily, giving them all one last lingering look. See you around, huh? Maybe we'll meet again. Though there was no, maybe, in the reality of it. His younger Ramen and Sakura obsessed self pouted, but said nothing. The other two seemed pleased he left. But he didn't care much. He was just glad he'd made a speedy exit, because there was no way he could even spend another second there. There was so much he wanted to reveal to his younger self, so many words of wisdom he wished someone had given to him at that age. So many warnings and so many encouragements, all of them making a bile he swallowed down thickly. Just keep walking, he told himself as he furiously tore through the streets, keep walking and don't look back. He came to an abrupt stop a little ways off near the memorial, covered enough in canopy that no one would see. Here's good, he supposed to himself, eyeing the sun. He'd have enough daylight for nearly 7 hours. There were some things about sealing that he'd just never get used to. Everything about it was so complex. Each line, be it curved, straight, or a mixture of both, had to be executed perfectly on a certain spot on the paper in relation to the rest of the graph. And even then, the graph itself was in relation to itself. The entire formula had to be translated backwards to jump forward in time, a point that Naruto clearly seemed to get confused with jumping backwards, as he had to redo almost the entire bottom left circle. The sun was making a very, very, slow ascent upward to the center of the sky, when Naruto finished. It was terribly hot. Unlike the day he left with Jiraiya, there was no comforting breeze to keep the temperature from skyrocketing. At least the canopy that dappled the sunlight helped a little. But it also made it terribly humid. He wondered how he ever lived through this day before. I thought I'd find you here. Naruto jumped. He turned around slowly, eyes warily eyeing the Junin vest and the orange book placed so nonchalantly in gloved hands. He wondered, was it the book, the mask, or the hair that gave his sensei away? A part of him wanted to smile and say hello, but the more sane part smacked himself up the head and told him to think of something quick. I'm just enjoying the local fauna. He hedged uneasily. Kakashi swept an eye to the now glowing seal. I can see that. There was a beat of silence. Did you need something? You don't seem to have anything to hide, the silver-haired man appraised with a light voice, making like he hadn't heard the blonde at all. But your stance is so rigid, it leads me to believe I've overlooked something. Good to know. Naruto retorted. I'll learn to fix it. Sure you will. The copy nin flipped a page. It was an issue Naruto was familiar with, and for a moment he found himself wondering if Kakashi had made it to the part where Ikki and Ringo started to have table S, but then realized that perhaps he should concentrate on more demanding things. Like the S-class sensei facing him down. If you can make it out. Kakashi was fast, but luckily, Naruto knew his quirks. Kakashi never lunged completely straight. There was a crick that leaned to his uncovered eye. Naruto took the small opening to dodge around the Junin, blocking the kunai with his own. However, there was a reason Kakashi was still his sensei, and he scr'd Naruto's cheek. He could feel his genjutsu slipping, as he was putting more effort into the seal to control it. Kakashi noticed too, only visible eye narrowing as he lunged again. This time, however, Naruto leaned backward, another one of Kakashi's quirks. He could be such a lightweight, it was easy to spring him in another direction with enough leverage. Velocity always helped too, though. When Kakashi lunged, he leaned back and threw the man upwards. At the very least, the seal would activate and Kakashi would have no evidence except burnt rice paper. When Kakashi tumbled back onto the forest floor, the seal began to flare. Naruto waved happily. Oh, not to spoil it, but Ringo goes for new in the end. His sentence wasn't finished because the explosion of light was too loud and he had already disappeared. Kakashi was left to stare brokenly at the burnt rice paper, the sparks already devouring the only evidence of time travel. X. He woke up with his hair singed and near chakra exhaustion. At least, he sighed to himself, he wasn't going to have to worry about a stick shoved too close to his nose. In fact, the only thing he would need to know is that the surface below him was very wet, it was very, very cold outside, and he was bound to get sick. Regardless of QB or not. He imagined it to be early spring, perhaps from the way the trees that lined the edge of the river were coloring nicely. It was definitely cold, but more of a crispness to the air than a frosty snap. From the sun no lazily descending into the tallest mountains, it'd have to be somewhere around 3. Well, if he was in water, it was always a good idea to see how deep it was. Twisting himself a bit, he swiped an arm below him, waiting to feel the swampy bottom when he hit something else. Soft fabric. With a concentrating frown on his face, he wedged whatever it was upwards, the fabric tugged onto something else and a whole bleeding torso came out of the water. Naruto muttered, scanning as best he could the rest of the waters. fairly clean, although there was definitely crimson streaking through it, which meant a battle was taking place upstream. And from the looks of things, a rather gruesome one. Naruto let go of the torso, it was already pulling him down anyway, and used his chakra to sit atop the flowing water. He didn't spot anything particularly familiar, though he knew he shouldn't be too far. He fished himself out of the water, and began to walk upstream. Only with his rather sensitive hearing could he hear the battle taking place. The sharp clang of kunai, a small yelp, the sound of something gutting another person, sword maybe, and another yelp were just some of them. It sounded to be maybe, Chunin. Genin even. What were they doing here? He didn't have time to guess. Actually, he barely had time to duck. A shuriken embedded itself in a tree behind him. Another one. A brown-haired girl, who couldn't possibly even come up to his chest, skidded to a halt after she had near tumbled out of the bramble. Leaves were stuck in her hair and she was breathing heavily. Naruto didn't have much time to fully assess her, as her right arm curved into an arch and 5 more kunai embedded himself into the trees behind him. He leapt out of the water and landed on the ground with little grace. Hey, whoa, stop that, F. He ducked, swung around, and hopped over the rest of her shots, hands up in the air in what he assumed was universal surrender. Obviously not. I'm lost, I swear. He pleaded to her. Seriously. She blinked at him docilely, and for a moment he thought she'd lower her guard. Instead, her eyes hardened. I can't trust you. He'd have found the situation comical was he not so flabbergasted. There was something really confusing and disorienting about time travel, and he was still reeling from hopping through time and space, and really, was a few minutes of peace too much to ask? Lucky for him her throws were fairly weak and easy to dodge, and didn't take much effort on his part. She was a Konoha kunoichi, judging from the headband, and could be anything higher than a newly minted chunin. Geez, hadn't she noticed the exact same symbol on his headband? Yeah, Rin-chan, called the boy who gracelessly sprawled out of the bushes. Get him, he cheered. The last of the team was rustling through the bushes. You idiot, look at his height I8. Naruto was about to kiss his feet for the first amount of common sense he'd had in the last 5 minutes, only to be met face to face with Kakashi. Naruto blinked. Well damn. Even at this age, he still wore his mask. Naruto had been looking forward to seeing a younger, maskless version of his sensei too. Oh my god. The girl, Rin, squeaked apologetically, hands flying to her mouth in a gasp. I'm so sorry. It's fine. Naruto grinned. No harm done. Well, looks like he wouldn't need a genjutsu. Probably wasn't even born yet from the looks of things. The three were quite a mismatched team, much like his own genin team. Kakashi was a dark, but small presence in the background, looking much younger than the rest of his team. The young girl had cropped brown hair that stuck straight, much unlike Sakura's wild mane. The last was an unruly-looking kid with jet black hair, and looked to be gravity-defying naturally. His goggles and chubby cheeks almost made Naruto think of himself. So you're a Konoha nin. So cool. Where are you coming from? Did you have a mission in Iwa? The boy with orange goggles gushed, peering closer. Rin whirled on him with an embarrassed face. Don't ask stupid questions, Obito. Though this would be the perfect opportunity to spin his alibi. Well, actually, I've been out on a reconnaissance mission for quite a while, so it's probably natural you guys don't recognize me. They looked enraptured. You all were probably still in the academy when I left. Really? Asked Rin with wide eyes. How long? Around 5 years. Naruto shrugged, sounding nonchalant. They all erupted into confusing exclamations, sans Kakashi, who just kind of grunted, but even he seemed amazed. Wow, he totally looked like Sasuke leaning back on the tree like that, arms crossed and calm demeanor. A cross between Sasuke and Kakashi. Naruto didn't even want to think at this point. Although, Kakashi at this age was really adorable, it might just be the soft plush white hair or maybe the way he thought he was the coolest thing in the world. It was a hard decision. That's so crazy. Obito cried with a grin. Then you must not know anything about Sensei's nomination. Naruto blinked, taken aback. What? Nomination? What time period was he in? Who's your sensei? Well, Minato sensei isn't from a big clan or anything, but he's really amazing. Rin explained, her obvious adoration for her sensei tinging her view in bias. Sandaime-sama nominated him for 4th Hokage. Isn't that amazing? The group demeanor shifted almost immediately at the mention of the beloved sensei. Obviously the three looked up to him very much, and the mere mention of him had them all glowing in pride. Naruto digested the information with a sobering look that none of them seemed to catch. He'd never go far to say he disliked the Yondaime, for he really knew nothing about the guy. And Naruto was never a guy to judge a book by its cover. Though he'd certainly have a reason for any hatred he harbored for the man who was his father. And he certainly had no ties to the guy, even though he'd been told they were related. It was almost surreal to think that these kids looked up to him so much. Would that have been him, had his father survived? Would he not have this mixture of disgust and impassivity at the very thought of him? To Naruto, he was simply just another guy who did him no good. But he wouldn't let his prejudice involve itself with these kids. They were all watching his reaction, so he smiled softly. That's pretty cool. Isn't it? Rin gushed. That makes him the youngest in Konoha history. Not even the Shodime was that young. Only by a couple years. Kakashi interrupted snidely. And everyone loves him. He's the hero of this war. So they were in a war, then. Of course. Naruto could have smacked himself upside the head. The Yondaime was announced Hokage after the turning point of the Iwa War. Talking about me. I started sneezing. Naruto froze. His voice wasn't anything he thought it would be. When he was younger, and he looked at his favorite Hokage on the mountain, he thought he'd have a stern voice, like when the old man was upset at his Anbu. But he didn't even have to see this man's face to know he was a unique, defined leader. It sounded laid back and a little higher pitched than he expected, much more like his own than he ever would have thought. This was the man who sealed the QB into him and pretty much made his life hell for 14 years. And this was his father. Jiraiya had eventually told him when he was halfway through theoretical time-traveling seals. He had said that one day, he may encounter his father, and ended up telling Naruto about his parents. And Naruto always wanted to know what they were like. Just very vague details, their hair color, the date of birth, nothing entirely special. Although he did say that his parents named him out of a character in Ika Ika, which was a bit weird. But no amount of facts could ever prepare him to seeing the man in person, standing in front of him. Yeah. Rin bounded up to her sensei. This man here has been gone for a while, so we were just filling him in on your position, Hokage-sama. Gah. Stop calling me that. Hokage-sama. Rin and Obito chirped. Hokage-sama. Kakashi scoffed from his place in the corner. Naruto waved. Nice to meet you, Hokage-sama. Stop. Minato groaned. The two were both quite blonde, though Naruto's had a darker shade, probably from his mother's red hair. His skin was darker as well, though that was most likely from years of travel. Their faces had a disturbing resemblance, the nose, the shape of the mouth and the chin. Minato had small, almost intense eyes, that seemed strange on his cheerful face. The eyes, though, not their shape, but that brilliant everlasting shade of blue that could never be properly described, a color that mixed the ocean and the sky together, was what really completed the image. They were so alike, Naruto may as well have been looking in a mirror. Minato was thinking much the same. The blonde in front of him looked so much like him he was near reeling in the aftershock. Maybe a bit tanner, but he could use a little sun. And those cerulean eyes, that exact shade as his, though maybe brighter. Something tugged him toward the boy. Minato finished his once over, a bit of suspicion in his smiling eyes. And you are? Just a Junin returning from a long mission. So many years away from home, Rin sighed. That must have been awful. Years. Minato echoed with shock. And then, with what may be understanding, were you part of Team Red? The Iwa reconnaissance team sent out all those years ago. Naruto could have wept for joy at the opening. One of the first to be deployed. Now that the tides have changed, they're sending a couple of us back. Minato eyed the blonde's bittersweet look. There was genuine relief in his voice. It must have been a long time, alone in a foreign country. He'd never had the first-hand experience of a spy, but he knew how difficult it was. We already finished our mission, there was nothing but sympathy in his voice. You can travel back with us if you like. Naruto blinked. Travel back to Konoha. Well, his rice paper was soggy, and he doubted that in this day and age his Haitai 8 would do him much good in Iwa either. And he could use some ramen, time traveling seriously made him hungry. Plus, He was already halfway done with his ink, gah. He'd go. And it wouldn't be horrible to get to know his father a little bit, right? Sure, why not? That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.